This talk for writing Tango taster represents a more formal part of the process of talk for writing as a whole. That's because it's the reading as a writer section, and that's about making sure the learners are able to consider the structure of a narrative and how certain elements of that structure affects how words might appear in the text itself. Up to now, you may have noticed that a lot of my approach to the talk for writing scheme has been relatively informal if you're already familiar with it. So this doesn't necessarily fit everything the recommendation suggests, but it might give you an idea of how Tango can help you achieve what you already are trying to achieve within your classes. So the way I've done it is to focus on different elements of the structure. So I'm looking at things like alliteration, prepositions, speech, repetition and connections in this page I've done here. As before, I've had the talk for writing PDF sitting to the side of me, but what I want to do is show you how I'm building this and then starting to add stuff to it as well. So in this case I'm going to shape some text. I'm grabbing a text box and I'm just literally placing a text box over the rest of the screen. I press and hold and pin it, and then go to text itself. It brings up a keyboard, and then I can write something else in it. So in this case I could write structure for the sake of argument. By doing that, I'm placing it back over here and pinning it down. Having that means that I can do one or two things. I can either get all the information I need from the PDF here, or referring back to the previous video, we could just use the collaboration function and have ideas being sent to the board. If you're doing it that way, you can have loads of ideas at once and then move them into the correct box, or a box that you feel is appropriate as we go through it. In this case, I'm going to do a bit of cropping, I'm going to do a bit of writing. So alliteration we've already looked at before. Connections is what I want to be looking at in this case. So I'm going to go to the drawing tools here. I'm going to start highlighting stuff. If you're highlighting stuff from the drawing tools banner, remember, it's a case of if you're highlighting across it, that sort of stuff happens. You've got to be careful about what you're placing over something so that it doesn't vanish like I've done there. I want to be able to, in this case, just highlight this bit. Once upon a time, so one day, so the sheep said, and so on. Okay, this once upon a time bit is a element of, and I would point that to the learners and ask them to come to the board and write something. I could snap it. I probably in this case would press and hold. In this case I'm going to unpin it. To be fair, I'm going to unpin that. I'm going to then shift this out the way, go to crop and just get the once upon a time from there, tick plus, move that across to there. Building that way allows us to not only put those phrases into the right box, but you can add certain stuff to it as you go. You can put images in there if you like as well. But what you're trying to do is build lots of examples of the structural elements as you go. I'm going to concentrate on connections, and by going to the next page, you'll see that I've already written some stuff down. I'm going to be trying to use this as a way to think of other options that the learners might have when they're writing this sort of stuff. So once upon a time would tend to lend itself to something's happened. So I'm going to get an arrow, I'm going to bring that arrow in, shift it around, and I'm going to start say once upon a time what? And we're going to try and build a story map in much the same way we did with the washing line. I can put in images, or I can put in words, or so on and so forth. So once upon a time, and if a learner were to just to say once upon a time a frog. Content, file, search, frog, PNG, and when the images come through, I'm going to bring them in ready for the work that we're going to do. Here we go, this one, and move it across from there. Because it's going directly from the internet, it's not really about you having to prepare everything in advance, it's more about what the learners can think up on the spot. But it's trying to get them to see that the once upon a time will always lead to the start of something. And then if we carry on round, we might end up with the frog meets and then and so one day, and later one night, and they'll see it as that structure that we're trying so hard to help them understand what it is. Beyond that, you can do a lot when it comes to having stuff created with the story maps of the washing lines. You saw what I did with the washing line before. It's probably not worthwhile going into that in too much detail at this stage because we have access to it in the previous video, but I'm going to start putting these other things together because as the last video within the imitation arm of the Talk for Writing, I want to see all this stuff come together for the next part, which is going to be the innovation.